Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's knowledge session. I know we have been discussing diversified topics because I thought, if we go in one pattern, unconsciously we're also building a new pattern, right? Okay, talking only negatively about it or talking only about our past. And many times I felt it is always, uh, you know, we need to consciously be volatile, be flexible, and be versatile about, our thought process also. And that comes from the understanding of learning different things, right? And holistically approaching it, right? Not just worrying about how bad my past was, or how negative I was as a person, how difficult was me to handle myself, right? But then moving forward, also how I can work with my existing self to create a better future and create a better present. Okay, so focusing more on the present is where we all have been able to consciously or unconsciously create a better future. Otherwise, what is today is going to be very sooner past, and every moment we are consciously or unconsciously creating more past, and that past is again a reason why I relive in my past. Yeah, I understand it's too much of a complex thing. However, when we are more aware in our present, I think it is going to be much more easier for us to create a better past and a better future as well. Agree? Agree? Yeah. So, how we need to be doing that? Have to focus on the present. Then we create a better past and we also create a better future, right? So, and our present is also going to be better because I'm making conscious choices, not just whatever comes my way, not just picking up whatever I like only, right? So, now having said this, I felt how we need word to word hand holding, right? Have you seen over the last couple of days we have been understanding how to break the pattern, how to you know uh, converse, and how to avoid common phrases which we have picked up as an habit. So I felt these kind of a specific dialogues really help us in giving us the clearer path for our understanding and for a appropriate conversation with people around us. That is how we are more confident and in control to converse with people. Agree or disagree? Yeah. So otherwise, by the time I balance my emotion, by the time I continue to learn and then get to that statement, it's too long of a time, right? So just because I have a statement, it is not going to be that I'm going to deliver it the way I want it. No, it is a still a practice before it comes the way which I love to hear, right? So mirror activity is something that we all have to do before we deliver the statement to people around. Otherwise, what really happens? It is not coming out the way they would love to hear it. And I'm also not happy that I've said something like this. Yeah, agreed. So today's topic is going to be, is it exciting? 12 communication rules that can save relationships. Very important. We all have a lot of relationship that we have built around us, right? So what are the communication rules that we need to follow to keep them floating? Many times, you know uh, we say one word wrong and the whole effort behind that relationship is thrown out of the window. Agree? Disagree? Yeah. So now I felt these things, if we work on consciously, then lot of things can be managed well. Okay, I'm not saying you can completely uh, be XYZ, because it's again a learning and it's again a process, right? Yeah, agree? Agree? Is everybody excited to learn this? Know these? I'm sure we all know, but then when it comes to taking into action, there's not a lot of practicing happening. But then we are imagining something and delivering it something else. That was my life experience. Okay, so now moving on. So, what are these 12 rules that we all need to remember? When you want to convey something difficult or sensitive, try writing it down using the right words and sleep on it. This is something that we have to consciously practice for people. So, I mean, there are so many things where we don't communicate to people because they get hurt, or the topic that I'm talking about is very, very sensitive. Then what I would do, I would avoid conversing, or I would avoid bringing up that point in the conversation itself, which over a period, because I had not addressed it as a seed, it continues to grow into a big tree, right? Can you all relate to this? Yeah. So it grows into a big tree. Now I want to fight uprooting this tree, which needs much more effort and dedication and consistent work, right? But then when I understand this is something that I need to convey in a relationship, whether it is your close family, your extended family, your friends, your partner, your child, doesn't matter, because clarity in the mind, clarity in the word choices that come out of my mind, right? So what you need to do is practice writing it. Okay, after you write it, there is certain level of clarity that comes in. What does it mean? Sleep on it means you invest some more time after you have put it on the paper. Yeah, agree? So you introspect on what you have written. Then what happens? Over a, after you reach certain level where you feel that, oh, okay, you have best conveyed what you want to convey in terms of your emotion or in terms of your experiences, then you practice on that first. Then you deliver it to the people. Then what happens? There is no after effects of your reaction, or there is no instant reaction that you can save yourself from, right? And you can avoid lot of after effects, because you wanted to say something sensitive thing, but then you are not taking time to be thoughtful about it, but you have conveyed it, but the other person gets in a completely different sense, and then when they come back and tell you, you made me feel this, you will be in a shock that, oh, did I say something like that? How many of you experience this? Yeah. So that is what really happens with us. So remember the rule number one, very, very important rule. If you're talking about something difficult or sensitive, write it down before. Important people? Yeah. Good. Are we ready for the next one? Okay. So the second rule is always address issues early or as they come up, to avoid build up resentment. You know, if I'm not, as I mentioned, if I'm not addressing it in the seed, when it is very new to the relationship, what really happens is they get bigger, right? The small, the thing that started as a small problem or a small irritation becomes a huge big banyan tree. Then what happens? Because I haven't taken action at the early on, now I have too much effort to make to correct it. and forget about that. You know, every time I see that happens, there is a huge emotional buildup that happens within me. That over a period converts into resentment, right? Let me give a simple example here. Let's say you're, what do you say, your home assistant, your maid or someone who comes to your house every day. Okay, you don't like I'm talking about simple things, people. You don't like the way she keeps the broom once she cleans the house, right? So you can, it's a simple thing. You could have told her on the day one, but then what you do you remember our last session where we keep, you know using these booby traps, thinking that she should understand, because I have conveyed it in all indirect ways possible. If she was smart enough, she should understand me. But then, with all your effort, still the, the way she does the thing is still continuing. Now, how does it help you? So, every time she continues to do that, you will carry a resentment, right? Resentment for your own self, many times resentment for the other person. The biggest issue here is not her or you, it is the gap of communication, right? You haven't clearly told her what you need, so obviously she cannot, assume things. She cannot assume what you like. Yes or no? So not really every time surprise gift is going to be happy people, right? Yeah, many surprises you won't enjoy. That is why I keep asking, what are you looking for? So that way, what really happens in a relationship, it is better to be transparent and be vocal about your needs. Because many times we don't enjoy, at least I never enjoyed a surprise gift which was packaged very well and delivered to me. Many times what was there inside I didn't enjoy because I was not expecting that. You know what I mean to say? Yeah. So it is always very, very important that address it as soon as you realize it is creating a discomfort in you. Don't wait for other person also to go through the journey and understand, then and come and reverse it. Then it will be too late. Then what happens? It is like, we're all like a ticking bombs. We're just, I think other day someone was saying, yeah, people in my house call me like balloon because we are only, one prick away to blast. Can you all relate to that? Yeah. So here, the problem is not the pin. The problem is that I have made myself a balloon because I have built up that air of resentment in that. Can you all relate to it? Yeah. Good. Shall we move on to the rule number 3? Yes. Okay. And this is something, that is Gen Z thing. I'm sure none of us do that, right? Still, I felt it is important that we include it. Don't text and fight. I see this, many times with the current generation. They are whether, driving, whether they are sitting in the bus or whether they are in the office, they just keep texting and then fighting. So biggest, relationship breaker is these chatting and then fighting, because when we are face to face and then showing our emotion and then trying to convey, still we fail. Just imagine what you can convey through the words. It can be perceived in their own way, right? So if you are, if you want to get into an argument, do that personally, because that way you have better control of everybody's thought process rather than just texting, because you can't convey your emotions through the text how much ever hard you try, right? See, the same word of I hate you can convey many ways, right? So even though the words still remain the same, when you fight and then say I hate you, What really happens, that the other person understands that you are angry and upset, that's why you're saying. But when you text it, they can't understand what mind mood you are in, right? So don't ever do it, and educate people around you to do this as well, because we are around a lot of younger crowd, right? So educating them is very, very important, because we fail to convey our emotions. Okay. And the way we say a lot of stuffs in the fist of anger, we can also type, and all thanks to autocorrect. You don't have to say anything, it'll come up with the words also. So now, knowingly, unknowingly, we can also put all wrong words possible. Yeah, agree. So now, shall we move on to rule number 4? Yeah. So this is something that I felt very, very valuable for me, was that rule number 4. That is, tell them how you feel, not how they make you feel. Very important. Because when I am going through anger, frustration, resentment, I blame my emotion and my feelings onto the person who's arguing with me, or who is the brunt taker, right? Who is in the receiving end at that point of time. So here, my feeling is my responsibility, right? So you focus as your concern, not as blaming the other person for making you feel that way, right? So here, what really needs to happen is, I am responsible for my own life. I think that funda needs to be remembered always. Okay. Not say that, you make this and you upset me, right? Have you heard this? Yeah, you always upset me. No, we can always convey that I am getting upset when I see you doing it. Okay. So your action is the reason, not that person himself or herself. Make sense? Make sense? Yeah. So you're not targeting the person. The problem is not the person. The problem is the behavior that person is practicing. No, see, they may know or they may not be aware of it as well many times, right? So here, bring the attention on the problem, not on the people. So that is when you keep yourself as the focus, because it's your emotion that you are feeling, not someone else's emotion, right? So tell them how you feel, not blame them for the reason saying that you make me feel it. Good. I think once we are conscious about rule number 4, I think other rules are not important at all. Right? Agree? Yeah. Good. Are we moving on to the next one? Okay. This is something that was the hardest thing for me to practice. Saying our own loved ones. I mean, it would come easily for me in the professional setup, or, where I'm dealing with strangers. But when it comes to our own family members or close one, say please and thank you often, even for the smallest of small things. Because when you get into the practice of showing gratitude to other people for their effort, for their, contribution to my life, then what happens? They also start valuing you, right? I remember, my older self, I would always feel that nobody cares about what I do. How many of you can relate to it? Yeah. So nobody cares about what I do. There's no gratitude at all for the people, right? So now what I started doing is, let them not do what that. But then I have the responsibility to practice that for myself before I point fingers at someone. I think that really has helped. So now I see most of the people that I meet always use these words. Not because they have the habit, because they often hear it from me. So they feel, when I'm talking to her, at least I will say this. They may not be doing it to other people. I agree with that. Still, at least if I practice what I need, then it is easy for me to receive the same from other people. So practice saying, please, can you please do this small thing for me? It might be smallest thing. But then when that word comes, there is a more softness in the people, right? To make it happen for you. But then, what I had been practicing was, I was practicing sorry more than saying these two words. How many of you can relate to it? Yeah. So I would say something, then I would say sorry because that has been my practice. Now I consciously switch to saying please and thank you. Now I don't have to say so many sorries because I am being grateful for everything that is done, and I am at a calmer self where I can avoid saying sorry. Yeah, when you have actually made a mistake, there's nothing wrong in saying sorry. But then, no, it doesn't mean that for everything I have to say sorry. No, I can as well say please, thank you. Make sense? Yeah, simple rule to follow, but hardest to practice. Yeah, I tell you that. Okay, so the rule number 6, before you say something in a conversation that is sensitive, ask yourself these 3 things. Okay, what are they? Is it kind? Is it helpful? Is it necessary? Okay, before you say something in the conversation that is sensitive, ask yourself, is it kind? Okay, so when I say that, is it is not just necessarily that it needs to be just kind to the other person. It is also important that it is kind to you, right? When you're saying it. Yeah. So, is it helpful? Okay. Is it helpful in the situation? Is it helpful for the other person that what you say is bringing some awareness to the other person's life? Yeah. And the third thing is it necessary? Many times we end up saying all the unnecessary things and invest half of our life in correcting that. How many of you can relate to it? Yeah. So, whole day is gone because I said something unnecessary. Good. So, I think that is how I became a quieter person myself, because I would say a lot of things which was not necessary, then I would bear the brunt of it, which was unnecessary. Right? So now I feel it is better to keep your mouth shut and listen to people. That way you have whole life and lot more time in hand to sort out your own mess than create a mess and then clean it up. Make sense? Make sense, people? Yeah. So even though I am a completely extrovert, very talkative, now I'm very happy talking to myself, but not to nobody. How many of you can relate to it? Yeah, I'm still a talkative person. However, I talk to myself more than I talk to anybody else, which brings lot of peace within me and peace around me as well. Make sense? Make sense, people? Yeah, good. So, are you enjoying the rules? So, here comes the rule number 7. Okay, so try thoughtful paraphrasing to show more empathy. Okay, so what is paraphrasing? That is, you want to say something. Okay, so uh, when you hear someone say something which is very upsetting to you, right? So it is upsetting to you because you perceive it in your own way, right? So when someone says that you're not good enough, right? Yeah, let's say nobody tells you on the face, but then they make up all the other ways to convey that to you. right? So now what you say is you paraphrase that. Did you mean to say this? So that person becomes more conscious of what they're, I mean, many times we also blurt out something, right? Because there's a lot of emotional distress already existing in me. So I go with my flow of thought without introspecting, without pausing, without, you know, uh, doing the paperwork, without following the first rule. Yeah, that is writing, sleeping over it before saying something. I have been through that phases, right? So then what really helps is this paraphrasing really helps that person become more aware of what they're saying. Yeah. So that awareness I can bring only if I am aware in the situation. So I cannot blame someone for not being aware when I myself is not aware. Make sense? Make sense? So the responsibility increases on me first before I point finger at someone else. Yeah. So try thoughtful paraphrasing to show more empathy. Okay. So this empathy is not just for the person who is talking, for your own self. Because the stories that we tell to our own self is the reason why we suffer more. But we all have an opportunity to rewrite our own stories when we paraphrase it to someone else, right? So whoever is said that to me, if I make a conscious effort to paraphrase it and get the real meaning of what they are trying to convey, then lot of, you know, healthy relationships can be built. Make sense, people? Yeah. So repeat in your own words that you understand the other person say. So you're trying to convey what you've understood by listening to the other person. Like, you know, uh, when child says, Mama, you're not there around when I need me. This is something every child will say, right? So now you have to ask them, you know, what do you mean by I'm not there around? When do you feel that I'm not there? Rather than, getting into our own internal conversation. Oh, I am not a good mother, I'm not a good professional, I'm not a good daughter. I mean, the trail of thought process just races, right? How many of you can relate to it? So rather than getting lost in your own thought process, paraphrase that to the person who has made the statement. That way, what happens? You are building a better understanding of what they are trying to communicate. Otherwise, we all jump into our own emotional distress at all, right? Rather than addressing what is in the situation. Make sense? Make sense, people? Yeah. So paraphrasing is something we have to generously use. For example, what I am hearing you say is, so you can start with your paraphrasing with these statements. What I'm hearing, what I'm understanding, right? These are the, oh, what I can see, what I can understand that you feel this way, right? So people always say, you say something and then people say, oh, why? Don't you think I understand what you're trying to say me? Have you heard this? Yeah, in a relationship, they'll only understand what they want to understand, right? But then, are you trying to recorrect it or reframe it for their better understanding, right? So you have to say, I understand that you're feeling this way, but then I didn't mean to say this. What I meant to say is whatever XYZ you want to say. Okay? Please remember, before you apply these 12 rules, two very, very important rules apply. That is number one, attain emotional balance within me. The second one is keep learning. So that is the only way I attain a better emotional balance and right mindset. Agree, people? Yeah. So after that comes these. But then we can start practicing on these so that we can parallelly work on those two and practice them, right? It doesn't mean that, now I know the rules, so from tomorrow I'm going to be achieving it. No, because emotional control is the hardest thing to do, right? So what you will do, you will keep practicing many times. Few words come, other words get lost, right? Many times the whole statement comes, the emotion is lost. Many times the other person in the other end is not even willing to listen to you. All possibilities are there, right? So in the midst of all of this, I will still continue to practice, because it is going to give more control for me on my own self. Agreed, people? Yeah. Are we ready for the eighth rule? Okay. In small everyday arguments, allow them to have the last word. Okay, so allow them to have the last word in every small argument, so that when there is bigger thing that is impacting you, you can always have your last word. Otherwise, what really happens is that we are fighting for all small little things and then leaving the biggest thing unaddressed. So that is where we end up having a lot of resentment in our life. Can you all connect, relate here? Yeah. So we are, fighting for all the trivial things. But when there's a big thing comes, they close us, saying that every time you are the one who's having the last word. So now we have to be, what do you say, more mindful about for what we are fighting, where we want to make our point. So every small little thing, you don't have to have the last word. It's okay. Let them keep winning. That's good for your relationship also. And that's good for your peace also. Right? Make sense? Make sense? Very important rule. Remember, it's easy to practice, I tell you. Right? Easiest to practice. Yes. And the rule number 9, very, very important. No name calling ever. This is the hardest thing to do when we have gone through a big fight. Yeah. So where both of you are in the heated argument, and then how you put an end to it is the same name calling, and you keep calling the same name to that person. There are no new names coming. How many of you can relate to it? Yeah. So no name calling ever. Simple one line rule. Okay. So don't ever use that. This is again attached to the very, very important two rules that I spoke. I think we did speak in our previous knowledge session. Practice the pause before responding. Very, very important. So how do I see? I wanted to focus more on how we can practice pausing, even though we have been, discussing a lot about how pausing can be practiced. I also brought up some more points. Okay. I want to respond thoughtfully. Let me take a moment to consider what you just said and gather my thoughts. So, this is the exact word that you can use when you want to pause. Okay. See, when you are pausing, the other person is also still waiting, right? To get your response to it. When both of us are in heated mind space, then we want to hear spontaneously what other person is thinking about me. That is how I'm going to escape my own thought process, right? So now what you do, you can't leave the other person in the midair. That will upset them furthermore. So what you need, how you can take a break for your own self is, you respond to the other person saying, I want to respond thoughtfully to the question that you have asked. Right? So let me take a moment to consider what you just said and gather my thoughts, then come back and respond to you. Make sense? Make sense? So practice this. How do you pause? You can't just shut the door and then run away from the scene. No, that is going to make people chase you around. not spare you. So you need to convey that, yes, I'm going to come back to you when I have gathered my thoughts, and then be here. Okay. So the second way how you can do is, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed right now. Okay. Can we slow down for a moment? So you are requesting them, right? So you can also add please here. Okay. Can we slow down for a moment, please? So that way there's a calmness in me, calmness in the person that I'm talking to, right? You acknowledge to your own self that I'm overwhelmed. And it's okay to say that rather than blurting out something bluntly, which you regret later, right? So I think a lot more gets resolved when I accept the whole situation itself. Know what is the emotion that I'm experiencing. Many times we avoid acknowledging this overwhelmed feeling, right? So what we need to say is, yes, I'm feeling this. Can we slow down for a moment, please? So that I collect all my thoughts and then come back and respond appropriately. Good? Are these helping to pause? Yeah? So, the other way how you can communicate is, this conversation is becoming too intense for me, right? It may not, see, the other person may also be knowing that it is getting intense, but then they don't know how to pause. But then here we are taking the responsibility for my emotion. I'm not saying that, oh, you are making this whole conversation very intense, which is what we blurt out in the anger, right? Rather than that, this conversation is becoming intense for me. I did like to take a short break and come back to it. Okay, so that is how we are not taking away peace from the other person, that, oh, this person always walks out of the situation, right? You are not hanging, you're leaving, not leaving the other person hanging in the midair and letting them trace with their own thoughts. You're just acknowledging that this is too much for me to process. So now I need a short break and I want to come back to it. Make sense? Make sense? Yeah? Good. Okay. So the other way you can communicate is, I am not sure I fully understand what you're trying to convey. Could you explain what you mean? So this is exactly like paraphrasing, right? So they might have blurted out two, three words. So now you're bringing their attention to those four words and then requesting them, can you please explain this to me? Because I am not able to fully understand. Again, you are taking the responsibility of acknowledging that I'm not able to understand. Make sense? Make sense? So you are not blaming the other person that you don't make sense. How many of you can recall? Many times we say that, right? You're not making any sense. It is not them making sense. It's not me. It's me not making a sense of out of what they are trying to say. So I always have the choice to request them to explain it to me. So that way, I also have a better clarity rather than jumping around with my own stories. As I told you about a child saying something, it might be very trivial, right? Mama, I wanted to eat this, but you haven't made it. That is the only reason child is saying this. Or I would have promised that, okay, I will take you to a park and I haven't kept my word. But then I relive my whole life because I don't paraphrase it. Paraphrase it. I get into my own story racing. Make sense? Yeah. So I don't understand. Please explain it to me. That is the other way you can take a pause. Okay, this is something that we have to communicate, people. I am feeling upset. If you're feeling upset at that point of time, I'm be feeling reactive at the situation, right? Many times we get uh, feeling reactive, and many times we also feel defensive. You know, the other person may not be able to understand their own emotion and then label them, but then for me, I am aware. So what I do, I'm feeling XYZ. and I do not want to affect our conversation. So let's take a break. Okay. See, here your focus is to continue having the healthy relationship with the person rather than getting defensive, upset, or reactive to the event and then lose that relationship, right? So, what you need to do is I need to have a break so that I come back with a new perspective about the whole conversation that we have been having, right? If I'm very reactive, then I end up saying something that is upsetting for the other person. If I am upset, I end up being reactive, right? Many times I'm also defensive. So, what I do, I start, you know, over explaining what I did as a right thing. Make sense, people? So these are couple of things that you can practice. And then I want to respond respectfully. So I need a moment to calm myself. Okay? This is the other way you can pause the conversation. Make sense? I want to respond respectfully. So you're taking the accountability, you're taking the responsibility of respectfully responding in the situation. Okay? Other person may or may not have it, but then you are taking that responsibility. So if you want to abide by that, then you need to stay calm. So how do you stay calm? By taking a moment, pausing. So that is how you can be able to work on it. I think these 6 statements are good enough for us to practice and pause. Yeah. So I think I wanted us to focus more on this pausing so that every other rule can be practiced. Otherwise, what really happens? We lose the battle, we lose the argument, we lose relationship, we lose people in our life, right? Because every relationship is built with time, with conscious effort, with lot of time invested, right? So we cannot just lose them at one argument or one, conversation. Okay. So use I feel, I think, I need statements and avoid generalizing you statements in the conversation. So as I said, I am taking the responsibility. That's why I say I feel overwhelmed. I don't say you are making me feel overwhelmed. Is it making a huge difference when we say that? Yeah. So I say, I think that you are meaning this to me. Please explain it to me. So then what happens? The other person will not get into a defensive mode and try to justify what they said. Rather than that, they are more open to bring that their side of the perspective to you. Otherwise, what really happens? I end up blaming them for making me feel. So they also get very defensive. Then we all take our stand and the argument begins. Right? Which we never know when it converts into a fight itself. Right? So now I need, when you say this, you know, uh, you don't give me, this is something how I commonly see the conversation happen. You know, people say, you don't give me time at all. Rather than that, I need more time of yours, or I need more time in this situation to continue this conversation. Isn't that very soothing? As well as I am owning that responsibility of staying calm, right? So I think, rather, people always tell you should never use I, you should always use we. But then many times the reason we all struggle is because we end up saying you are the reason for everything. And we point out when it is bad. Okay. And none of us like being pointed out, right? None of us enjoy anyone blaming me for their trouble, right? So when I take that responsibility, it is me It is me, I feel, it is I who think, it is I who need. Then what happens? Other person is more calmer and they are also not threatened. Very, very important. The reason why we get into an argument, the reason why we get into a disagreement is because I am crossing someone else's boundary which they are not happy about. And why we behave also is because someone is stepping onto our boundary which I'm not happy about. Or many times it is also that I am probing someone else's fear. So that is why they get agitated, threatened, and become very defensive. Many times I become defensive because someone is, questioning my fear or making fun of my fear or, you know, devaluing my fear. Make sense? Make sense? Yeah. So one more rule to go, people. Is 11 rules helping? Yeah. Good. Good. So now, okay. Ask yourself often, how can I say what is in my heart and be compassionate at the same time? I think this one rule really saved my life, people. Okay? I think I was telling people what I want to tell by not being passionate because I used to feel that, oh, I'm telling the truth, right? Over a period of my work with people, I realize my truth is only my truth. It is not everybody's truth. Okay. However, I understand that the other person's truth is not helping them, but I take time to introspect and analyze how I can communicate that to the other person with a compassionate feeling, not going out all there out and blurting out saying that my truth is the only truth, which saved many relationships to me, which helped me build a conscious relationship with every individual that I touch, right? So how can I say what is in my heart, okay, and be compassionate at the same time? You say what is there in your heart. The problem is not what you say. The problem is how you say, which impacts the quality of relationship, people. Agree? Agree, everybody? You might be seeing the same person is buying the same thing from someone else, but not from you. Why is it? Because you are not compassionately saying, you are threatening the other person by questioning their belief system. And none of us enjoy how much ever progressive mindset we have, none of us like being pointed out. Agree? Disagree? Yeah. So my work with people has really helped me to understand this, to practice it in everyday life, which has impacted a lot of people, right? So we can seriously impact people around us. Very, very easy to do. When we just follow this rule number 12, that is the reason why it is in the end. Okay. So if you forget everything, just stick to rule number 12, then everything will automatically fall in place, people, because you already know why you're doing it. Make sense? Yeah. So as you know, that's the rule number 12. And that's it from my end. Thank you, everybody. So hope everything is making sense. Why there's so much disagreement? Because I didn't even know these 12 rules existed. Very simple. So why I'm losing a lot of relationship, why I'm losing a lot of people, why I'm losing a lot of my peace is because I don't know these 12 rules existed. There might be many more. But then I tell you, just follow rule number 12 and everything will fall in place. You convey what you have to convey, but then be compassionate about it. And it's wonderful to hear each one of your valuable inputs, and we will discuss more in our coffee cutte, how to pause and how to use the vocabulary that is existing within us and create a better quality conversations with people, and of course myself first. I think once I improve the quality of relationship and the conversation with myself, then you don't have to put a conscious effort, automatically good things come out of you. So have a blessed weekend, people. Love you all. Take care. See you all on Monday.